In the previous class, we have learned how to write a function like this, and how to use the function in multiple places, in different contexts, within the same program. But, if you want to call this function from another program, you can also do that. Here in this function, we are validating the user input, to ensure that is only numeric, only a positive integer. If we have a similar requirement in another program, we do not need to duplicate the effort to write this function in that program. We can simply import this, and reuse this function in any other program as well. So it becomes easily available to the entire world. Let us first understand this little better. So we have this test.py file, where we have this code written. Now, let us create another program. We just add a new file, and name it as new program.py. Fine. So, this is another program file from where we want to call the function that in this file, the validate function. This is like an external reference from the new program file. We want to access the contents of altogether another file test.py. To do this, we have the import feature in Python. If we import this test.py into this new program, then the new program can easily access the functions in this. So this new program has to import our test.py. Let us open this new program in our editor. Let us go to the desktop and select new program.py. So, it is right now a blank file. The editor has opened it in a new window. Let us resize this window a little bit. Okay. We will now add some code here. We will first take in user input, maybe his weight. So, the usual input statement with a message, and then we call the validate function to validate the input. Once a valid input is received in this weight variable, we will do some processing with that. Let us write some more code, some if-else block like this, with some conditional statements. Just to process the input weight. So, we are verifying the weight, to know in which bucket it falls. And based on that, we are displaying various messages like overweight or underweight. Now, if we try to run this program, it will throw an error in this line. That is because we are calling the validate function here. But we have not defined the function in this program yet. So, Python will try to search for this function and will fail, and it will throw an error that the function is undefined. We actually have this function defined in the test.py file. So we can use that function only if we import that file here. We just say import test. We don't need to write the .py extension. We just use the file name, which is test. So Python will import or copy the entire content of this file into this new program. Then it will be able to find the validate function as well. But this function belongs to this test module. So we have to write it like test.validate. Only then it will be able to refer to the function within the test module, and it will smoothly execute that function. So we need to qualify a function like this with its module or package name. Let us run this. It says, please enter a number. You might wonder, our message was, please enter your weight. But here the prompt is, please enter a number. So why did it change the language? The answer is simple, it is not executing this line at this moment. It is still executing this statement. When Python encounters this line, import test, it makes a physical copy of this entire thing from test.py to this file. So in that copy, first it gets this function, which is the definition of a function. And after that, we have this code written. So it is executing this code. This first line, which says, please enter a number, is exactly what it is showing here. But this was not our intention. We just wanted to use this validate function only. So in this import, we do not want to import everything from here, we just want to import this function. So we have to delete all this code. When we are trying to make a generic code or generic function, which will be used by many programs, we cannot have any code like this which is very specific to one particular program. Primarily, we will have just functions here, some generic functions. So we will remove this thing. And if we want, we can have other functions also here. Like some function called increase or some other function, say decrease. Anything like that. We have written some simple functions here. But in reality, there can be more complex functions. We can have many such functions inside one module. Right now, we have 3 different functions in test.py module. we have to first save the changes we made here. Now when Python executes this import test statement, it will get only these functions, no other code. And it will execute this program as we really wanted. However, it will still throw an error, as we are calling this validate function with only one argument, while the function definition demands two. We will look at the solution later. Let us first run this code and discover what error actually comes up. It says, please enter your weight. So this time, it did not get confused. It is executing this line, and hence asking for the weight. Let us say 56. Here is the error as expected. The error description says, validate missing one required positional argument, which is error message. We are calling our test.validate function, and Python could locate that function here. But then, it sees two arguments are required. But we called it with only one argument. We have to pass exactly the same number of arguments as present in the function definition. We can of course add some message here, any message to pass, it will surely work. But, if our intention is to make a generic module with a generic function called validate, it will be a better design if we do not make this error message as a mandatory argument. We can, and we should, make this function flexible, so that we can call it with or without an error message. To do that, we can use a default value for this argument. We say, error message equals to invalid input. It will work as the default value. If it does not get an error message, it will use this default message instead. Now, if we call this function with one single argument, it will map that value to this number argument. And since it can't find an error message, it will use this invalid input message. Let us first save these changes. So in our program, we will call validate with just one single input. This is much smarter and better way to code than to use an error message every time we call this function from somewhere. Please keep these design factors always in mind. Let us run this. Please enter your weight. We will say 60. It says, you are within range. So our call to this validate function with just a single input worked perfectly. Now we will look at another example, another use of this import feature. This time, we will import datetime module. Keep all your imports at the top, but their specific order does not matter. We have seen this module in some earlier classes. This is an inbuilt module that comes bundled with Python. We will make use of one of its functions in a print statement here. So we will write print today's date is, and then we will call the function datetime date today in brackets. So we are calling a utility function from this module or package. This today is a function within the date component of the datetime module. Technically speaking, we are making a reference to an external file here. If we now run this, it will say today's date is this. So Python went into this datetime module, then executed this function, then it executed our print statement, and then it came to the next line of this code. Maybe we can say 35, and it will give us an alert. One important thing about import. The file that you want to import must be at the same location as the program file. But where is this datetime file? How did Python find this datetime module? We have this datetime file in the same location where Python was installed. There, we have this library folder, within which there are many such files. And we have the file datetime.py also here. So, in our code, when we say import, Python will first try to find the file in the same location of the program file. Otherwise it will go to the system path, and will look for the module in the system folders, or Python library. Likewise, as you can see, there are many other modules here. We can import any of them, and utilize for our programming. Or, we can even install new packages. That is a great strength of Python. So, today we learned how to use import, and how to use functions defined in some external module or external file. Let us briefly discuss one last topic. In this test.py file, we can convert this also into a class. In order to create a class here, at the very beginning of the code, we will simply say, class number. This number is just like a variable name. You can use any name of your choice, it becomes the name of our class. Now, we have to put a colon. Then, this entire code will be within a code block. We have to indent this entire thing in order to include it within this class. So we will indent all these lines. I have not explained yet what a class is. The concept of class comes from the object-oriented programming approach. It is little complex for a beginner's level. We will cover this in a separate course, but I wanted you to learn how the class definition is written and how to call this. As of now, you can just assume that a class is a wrapper, or a container of several functions, or attributes. Like here, we have encapsulated all these functions within this number class. So we have the test.py module, which contains a class named as number, which in turn contains several functions here. We will now save this. In our new program, we have imported the test module. But if we now run this, it will throw an error. Let us see the error, and then discuss. Go to Run, and Run Module. So today's date is printed. And it says, please enter your weight. Up to this line, there is no error. Let us enter 65. And it raised an error, attribute error, module test has no attribute, validate. If you see, in the test module, we do have the validate function. But this is now under the class called number, so we cannot directly make a call to test.validate here. We have to use the class name, and then the function in it. That means we have to write test.number.validate. Python will now first go into the test module, then into the number class, and then it will execute the validate function. So, this is how we refer to a function, if it is within a class, in any external module. Let us now run this, and verify. Enter your weight, 65. It says, you are overweight. So there is no error this time. In Python, there is an extensive use of external modules and classes, which enhance the job and reduce our coding effort. As a beginner, you will probably not create a class, or a module yourself, but you will have to use many built-in modules and classes very often. So, I wanted to explain these basic things. Now you know how to import a module or a class, and how to refer to its functions or methods. We will discuss more about classes in an advanced course. In the next class, we will learn about error handling mechanism in Python, which is a must-have for an error-free programming. I hope you like this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel.